Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 8 of the 9 candles. And as you can see, the marvelous Kim Carey is here from Intuitive View. We're going to talk about the candles and the energies and the perspectives from the kind of world she lives in, what she does. But first, as you know, we have to go light the candles. And we've got all of them laid out here. And you know, in this middle, I have a citrine, that's the stone for abundance and adventure and good thoughts. I've got a tiger's eye that is here to ground us all, and it's my favorite tiger's eye. It has every color you can get in that kind of agate is in that one little globe. That's why I like that one. And then I have the fluorite, that's the octahedron, the 8-sided fluorite. It's got 4 corners, like north, south, east, west, to the right, to the left, to the front, to the back. And then it also has ones for above and below. And I've always thought that that fluorite crystal sort of embodied how we feel about pulling our own energy together. And there, as I've said before, I don't think there's a religion that doesn't have a prayer that somewhere doesn't say, to my right, to my left, to my front, to my back, above and below, Lord, protect me. And that's how you kind of build ourselves in a little crystal. I love those crystals. So the meditation for 9 candles. If you remember the last 9 candles I did for this, it was coming up on an equinox, and we were canoeing across the Pacific, that little open boat canoes. And now, and we were just riding the wave to see where we ended up. And now we're learning about where that wave was pushing us. And so together we meet to light 9 candles in the season of Lionsgate. Lionsgate is the alignment of Sirius, Earth, and the constellation of Orion. Run out of main here. Let's see. And it's a time of great energetic exchange in the universe, and it always has been recognized as that. The portal dates give us a boost to our personal aspirations, to the aspirations of the collectives. It allows us to manifest new ideas and enhances our spiritual energy as individuals and in the collective. And let's see, this is the 8th candle. This is your candle. Okay. We have learned to accept our own energetic vibrations, and we're becoming aware of the energies arriving from the universe to support the changes on Gaia and in ourselves. We acknowledge that many colored candles symbolize the expansion of the energy that's happening to all of us. And we are, and to help us learn how to bring that energy and balance our lives in this time of universal shifts. We ride the waves surrounding us to a better future. And with that, we go back to Kim. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. And before we got on camera, Kim and I discussed a little bit about some of the energies that I've been keeping track of. And, you know, how do you explain to people when you just know what you know?
That you just know what you know when you
when you're doing your scribbling or you're doing your reading, how do you explain that to people?
The actual practice. Do you mean how do I explain my process? Is that what you're
how do you feel it? How do you feel it? I mean, because people
how does it come in?
Yeah. I'm just saying to people, they say, well, do you feel these energy shifts? Yes, I do. I feel things get stronger. I feel that it gets easier to let people go and to bring people in as you get more discernment that you learn. So that's what I'm talking about. I mean, it's lovely that the scientists now are defining all the waves that have been hitting those who are sensitive in the planet for a long time. But that it's how do we use that information?
Right. It's interesting because I I'm a pretty logical person, and so I don't I'm a person that doesn't automatically go to the spiritual. I'll
Mm-hmm.
usually, if something weird happens or if I'm feeling weird, I always go to the physical first. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
the way I'm wired. And then when I'm like, okay, there's nothing that I can think of, then I go into, well, what's going on collectively today, or what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen, or what. So I feel like even though this is what I do and I do it every day, I'm really wired as a human. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very much I'm very aware of the fact that I'm living this life and I'm in this human existence right now. So I teeter back and forth. It's and when you talked about in the opening, when you talked about balance, I thought that really does, or seeking balance, that it's a good time to seek balance. That really resonated because um, I have found myself paying attention to things that I don't normally pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
My diet is one thing. I don't ever, I don't think about it. I just kind of go through the motions. I eat breakfast, I eat lunch. I'm not a foodie really, so
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of go through the motions of it. And I've really been locked into like, what's in here? What does this do? How much
Mm-hmm.
sugar is this? It's all of a sudden I'm very concerned about that. And then
Mm-hmm.
um, picking up, I had kind of not very sporadically exercise because I do this, but also
Mm-hmm.
because I had my mom had passed away, and then I had a really busy month of May, and just along this last year has just been kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. So I've really been neglectful that way, and then all of a sudden I feel like I need to start exercising. So I have felt the imbalance more, and I have felt the need to get in balance more. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's one way that I can feel it. And it's almost like there is something about the energy of the last, I don't know, I think since spring, that
Mm-hmm.
feels like get ready,
Mm-hmm.
get in tip top shape in every way,
Mm-hmm.
find your center, things like that, like get grounded, things like that. I've been very aware of the need to plug in every day personally, um, meditating, praying, going back to books that I read a long time ago that had pearls of wisdom. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this, it all very much fits with the waves of energy we've been getting. And yet I didn't put, until you were reading that, I didn't put all of these things together that I've
Mm-hmm.
been feeling. And because I do tend to be like, oh, well, today I'm just tired. Well, there's other
Mm-hmm.
reasons for that. And I don't always go to those. I don't always move towards the spiritual always first. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, well, this isn't, I don't know what this is. So is it something in the collective? It's something empathically I'm feeling, is something new. Then I'll go to that area and, and figure it out. One thing I did want to bring up though, we were talking before we came on, and you can, if you haven't talked about it, you can tell people what
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about the ley lines and
Yeah.
that. Something that was really interesting is you talked about the black holes. Can you talk about that again and the
Okay.
hum that's happening?
There's a hum that radio telescopes began to pick up in 2015, and it's like all waves, which means it shows it's like it's got peaks and valleys, but its peaks and valleys are very far apart because it's going across the universe. So at first they could sense it, and it's kind of passing through everything. And so part of the earth would get some of it, part would get, I mean, it was very difficult for them to try and pinpoint where is this coming from, because it's not as close together as waves usually are. Waves, as the definition is, it's repeating disturbance or movement. that may of any kind of energy that passes through space and matter. That's what the definition of a wave was. So all of a sudden they had this wave they could pick up sporadically on telescopes, on radio telescopes. They actually had to go ahead and redefine their instruments, and what they had to find a marker in space so they could say, we know it was here then and then it's here now, to figure out its frequency. What they did, do you know what pulsars are?
No, I can guess, but go ahead and tell me.
Pulsars are when stars really go down to nothing, and what they become is an incredibly intense energy beacon that sends out a pulse. And the pulses are, that's one of the first things that they got from the giant radio telescope projects that movie Jodie Foster's in. That's when they found one of the first pulsars. So these pulsars, I've only known about them. I may be mistaken, but I think since in the 90s. Anyway, but they figured out a way, because there's this whole area full of them. And they could figure out, because the wave is strong enough to move the pulsar somehow. So they can track the pulsar to here. And that's when they figured out exactly where in space they think it's coming from. And what happens is when galaxies eventually, when they get big enough, they'll merge. The theory is we'll merge with Andromeda, but it's going to be so far in the future. Don't pack your go bags, guys. It's not tomorrow. But we'll merge with them. And at the center of each galaxy, which is another thing they found out, is there's a black hole. That's what makes them go round and round. It's dealing with that galaxy. I mean, it's dealing with the black hole. So these two galaxies came together, and it's not like they crashed into each other like cars. They just sort of wound up together. So now they're out in far space, whizzing around like little circles around each other. And the energy, the sheer amount of energy in those two black holes is what's creating this hum. Then they could track the hum through space by using pulsars. It's like, I feel like I really should have paid better attention in science class, but there's several YouTube things you can go to and see if you want to see about it that do a much better explanation of what it is. What was important to me is that the energy's coming here, it's passing through us, it does not leave us unscathed. It's like the photonic energy, and we talked about that. It shows up on the Earth every 13,000 years when we swing in to this part of the galaxy where we're not protected by a cloud that really cut down on the subphotonic atomic energy. And that's the sort of stuff that you don't want to get caught up with, because it kind of changes your cells. Well, they knew it happened 13,000 years ago. So this year, a couple of years ago, when we started getting in this, the geobiologists, like Rory Duff and those guys, they all said, oh, it's starting again. And the reason they knew it was there was because it not only happened 13,000 years ago, it happened 26,000 years ago, it happened 39,000 years ago. You go back about 13,000 years all the way back, and where they can find it is it actually changes the crystalline structure of the rocks. That's hitting us. And when I first saw that 2 years ago, I went, crap, if it's doing that to a rock, what is it doing to me?
What is it doing to us?
And at one point, they knew it was coming in. One point I talked with, I asked you, do you think that ETs or that the COVID changed was something that came from outer space? And so far, no one's gotten that that's what it was. It was just somebody messing with things here. But it occurred to me, if all of a sudden we had the wrong little subphotonic movement got in the wrong little germ, it could take us all down.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
yeah, no, I was just going to say the one of the reasons I wanted you to talk about the black holes is because, or that hum, is because on a live, I think it was a Thursday Night Live, one of the Thursday Night Lives. I think that's the live one that it was on. Somebody asked me a question about ETs, and I always go into that very, I just don't know anything about ETs. So I'm always like, oh, I'll get what I get, whatever I get. And the whole time that I was reading on ETs, I could hear this low hum. And it was coming into my, it was like it was coming from the back of my head into my ears and kind of passing through. It
Mm-hmm.
was the weirdest thing. And I kept saying, I can hear this low, really low hum. And as soon as I stopped reading on them and the question, it was gone. But it
Mm-hmm.
struck me as it stayed with me because I thought that was really weird. Usually, if I get anything like a buzzing or it's usually high
Mm-hmm.
pitched, and it's usually when I talk to anyone that's at a really, really high vibration, I'll hear like a ringing, more
Mm-hmm.
like tinnitus, that kind of thing. I've never had anything like that happen before, where it was just this low, steady hum. And when you said that, I was like, that is so weird because that's what I was getting when I kind of
Mm-hmm.
tuned into that ET energy. And anyway, I just thought it was interesting to bring up because I thought that is it explains a little bit more to me, maybe what I was picking up and
Yeah,
what was coming through.
we're here. We're
We're
coming.
here. We're around a black hole.
We're spinning around the black hole. I've actually seen some of the illustrations of what they think. They think that it's really enough constant pressure that it's moving atoms within the other planets and within our planet, which means kind of within us. And it's going to be interesting to see what they find now that they've all come out and said we're all watching it. And they're all watching it from different perspectives to kind of see if they can, there. It was an incredible. It was 7 different astronomy um, centers reporting all on the same day. They all agreed to report on the same day, and
Sorry.
that's okay. Well, now they're
Still
making you
recovering from our
sneeze.
kitties.
Uh, are you allergic to your
I'm
kitties?
allergic to cats. Yeah, and
Oh,
I'm in the room that they were in, so I
yes.
haven't. I have to change all the linens and do everything, but I'm okay,
Well, and they're gone, and they're going to be happy and adopted.
and they're gonna be happy. Yeah.
So yes, I mean, aliens are sort of like kitties. They kind of just appear in your life.
And then they're there. Then you're taking care of them. No.
Hmm.
How is the energy affecting you, Nancy?
Um,
On your
okay,
personally?
yeah. In February, they put me to sleep. And normally, when we're having real energetic shifts, I don't sleep. I have quite the opposite.
Oh, okay.
And so all of a sudden, I was hitting the bed and I was sleeping 12 hours a day, which is
Mm.
not like me. But it was okay because I was doing my shows. People were just kind of, I had a feeling the whole first 3 months of this year, everybody was just holding their breath, like they were waiting. I mean, the few people I read, that's where they were. And maybe it's because that's where I am. I find I tend to end up reading people who are in somewhat the same place I am. And then when I started to wake up to these changes, my guides kept telling me, we'll give you the information. And they do. I open up YouTube and some whacked out channel on heavy duty science that why would, the card reader want to know?
Right.
And I also catch a lot of stuff through dealing with people who deal with minerals. Because somebody asked me the other day, do you think the stones are alive? And I do. I think they're just a different kind of life force than we have. But I've got much more sensitive to them. And it's also taken me a lot longer to build each grid. I really need to kind of apologize to some people because it used to be I could just go blah, blah, blah and sit down and do it. But now it's requiring a lot more concentration, which I'm sure
Mhm.
means it's a better grid, but doesn't speed the process up much. And I just keep getting pushed and pulled by all the different energies into studying all the different energies.
Mhm.
So I don't get known for doing a thing,
Right.
and I'm fascinated with how everybody else works. Like in this series, I've had a numerologist, Dan Perry, come speak, had 2 astrologists, which have very different points of view, but are both just really practical. Here's how you deal with it, astrology. You need to talk to Dr. Gale if you want to find out about ETs, because she came in all that. Although what's funny, she went to Shasta thinking this is what, don't think we know what we're doing either, folks. She went to Shasta thinking she was going to be working with the ETs because it's such a hub of that kind of activity. And it ends up she went up there to meet the elementals.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
she was out in this part of the woods, and she said, Nancy, I was in the strangest place in the woods. There's like no squirrels and no birds flying around and nothing skittering in the underbrush. And I said, you need to go talk to the elementals that are supposed to be there. Something's blocking the energy there. And she goes, now I got to work with elementals. Flying around spaceships isn't enough. So she went and she started working with them, and she found out from them when she woke up this whole little part of the mountain. And she told me that the third or fourth day she was up there, well, they told her, you have to come here for at least 5 minutes a day for a week. And this was in the heavy duty winter. So, and she's from South Carolina, but she did it. And she said before she was even done, a whole flock of birds flew over, and that's the first time she'd seen that there. And then the next time she came, there were squirrels running around in the trees. And so she said, yeah, it's coming back alive. And then she had, the way she gets her visions and her stuff is, they said, you need to keep talking to Nancy Jean about the elementals, because that's what you're going to do up here. I mean, the elementals just come visit me. They have no regard for my privacy or anything. The fairies come and they move things around, and they move decks, and I go looking for a deck, and I know exactly where I put it. But I don't go outside much. For one, where I live, it's very hot. And especially when it gets this kind of hot, it's not a great place to be. So the elementals have to come in and see me. But Dr. Gale, they can drag out in the woods.
Now, when you work with elementals, do you see them in your mind's eye? Do you see them, or do you feel them more?
I feel them, and I can hear them. They'll talk. I'll be in my living room, and I'll be talking in my office. I can hear their voices. There are some that are very tall and elegant, and there's some that are, I mean, they're tall to me. I'm 5'4". I mean, so they could be, but they're taller than I am. Cecil comes to me in visions, and he tells me kind of what's going on. He told me I need to get ready, because when Lionsgate breaks, more people are going to be seeing elementals and understanding the effect of them. And the elementals were born on this earth just like the real earthy people are.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to have a bit of our shortcomings. They have a bit of our duality. They can be really, really lots of fun, and they can be a real destructive pain in the ass if they want to. And they have them in Mexico. They're called alux. And the president, some people were looking at this area to build something, and in all the trees were these, you could see images of these creatures. And he goes, we're not going to put the project there because the alux don't want us to.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, and they have a culture there that's much more, within their collective, much more tied to the ground, to the land. And the alux, there was a highway that kept breaking. It kept falling down. And they got, one of the natives came to them and said, you have to build a house for the alux because you built this road over their palace. So there's a highway between wherever you land to go to Tulum, Mexico, and into Tulum, Mexico. And I've seen pictures of it. There's this whole little palace built under the highway.
Oh my gosh.
And it stopped in the road. The road hasn't cratered since then. So
wow.
So
that's amazing.
That's what's going to start happening to us as more of us become aware of them. I have a ley line in front of my house, and it has a tree on it. It's all covered with burls, and his name is Hogarth. And when I found him, it was reasonable to go out and talk to Hogarth. Then it got really hot, and I said to Hogarth, do you mind if I'm not out there? And I could hear him just as plain as when I'm standing next to the tree. He said, No, you stay in the cool. It's okay. But um, he's so funny. He'll say it must be awfully hot out there. He said, "Oh, it's going to rain in a day or so." And I'm looking on the map with where the little clouds should be. There's like no clouds, and I go, "Good luck with that, Hogarth." And sure enough, 3:30 the next afternoon, big thunderstorm, which is not a typical time for us to have thunderstorms here in the summer. So get to know your local elementals.
Okay, I will. Well, and I was thinking about, I was just thinking that we've had such fires in California.
Mhm.
Um, are the elementals a, do they move back and forth from another dimension, or are they always here?
Okay, what happened is they were everywhere, and that's why you read in the fairy tales. And if you know anybody from a Celtic background, they always had
Mhm.
stories of the little people, like could see
Yeah.
them dancing in the glens and stuff. But as man became less tied to the land and more tied to machines, which was what happened in the 1800s, they fade. It's kind of like Tinkerbell. They faded away because they weren't being clapped for. They weren't being
Mhm.
acknowledged. And they found it so painful to be around people that they were offered another dimension. And so they're in a dimension inside the earth. And it looks a whole lot like Tolkien's kind of land, let me tell you. I had a,
Mhm.
that's how I met Cecil. He said, "I need to take you somewhere." And if you got a dragon saying they're taking you somewhere, you go, right? And I rode on Cecil, and he took me down into their world and where they live. And they told me then that they would be leaving soon, that they would be coming up to help us rearrange our energy and rearrange how to survive, and that they were having a dance, they were doing ceremonies. It's just this, I mean, there was everything in the world was there: gnomes and dwarfs and elves and fairies and siths and the unicorns, the whole deal. And then uh, Cecil brought me home, and I said, "Okay." And I went, and all of a sudden I was back in my bed, and I woke up and I remembered the dream, so I wrote it down. And then I was talking about a friend about it, and she goes, "What did your dragon look like?" And I said, "Well, it was kind of reddish, and he's has this lovely long face, but he's softer than I would thought he'd be scaly, but he's not. Sort of more feathery soft."
Mhm.
She said, "I'm going to send you a picture." And a friend of hers who doesn't do fantasy art had painted my dragon.
Oh my gosh.
And so they sent me the picture, and I said, "That's Cecil. Where'd you find it?" The other thing the woman painted the same night she painted the dragon, she painted the portal I went through.
Oh my gosh.
It had a gold rim, and then it's blue in the center. And when we went into that, I was like, Cecil and I are going to make it into this. It looked like it was going to get teeny tiny. And as to the best of my ability to reconnoiter where I was
Mhm.
on Cecil's back, and we'd just flown through Europe, and I could see like Big Ben and the Eiffel Tower. And so I knew kind of where we were. We went off the Irish coast, and then there was this hole in the sea, and that's where we went to go visit them.
My
So three
gosh.
days later, they had told me this was coming up to my last 9 candles, one before this, and they had said, uh, I got woke up, and Cecil was back. He said they want to talk to you again. And this time when I went, they were dressed very much like they were in their courtly garb. They weren't in their
Mhm.
party clothes, and they were all lined up at the at the edge of this little glen. And they said, "Why aren't you including us with your ceremony?" And I said, "So you really want me to go on YouTube and tell people I ride dragons and I talk to fairies and elves?" I said, "I think it's probably true because I know you got a painting to me of you through a distant person." But I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yes, really, because you understand. You have a bloodline back to us, and I was a seer for Vikings, so I probably do." Um, and they said, you need to start including us and bringing more small ceremonies that people can do for themselves because they don't need to come to you, a reader, or to anyone else, and they need to get in touch with us, but they need to do that on their own. And so I got home. I mean, I got up the next morning and I had to go somewhere in my car. And I'm driving in my car and I'm looking, and there's a gold dragonfly, solid right behind, flying right next to my car window.
Oh.
And I went, "They sent you, didn't they?" And it kind of bumped against the window. And I said, "Okay, tell them yes, I'll do it." And it flew away. And I do not live where we have dragonflies. It's very dry where I live.
Right. Right.
So that's when I changed that last. That's why we went to putting up green candles for the elementals that are part of our green world. And we talked a bit about them. But I'm still trying to figure them out. So people are like, "How can I get a dragon?" I don't know.
Where can I go?
You know?
Well, are there crystals, specific crystals associated with the specific what do you call them, characters and from the elementals, like dragons or like fairies?
They're more in line with if the dragon affects you color wise, but this is called a writing stone, and that looks like it was drawn on it, but that's actually white inclusions in a very dark matrix. And if you were to cut this, you'd find this inclusion further back. I mean, these are just fun. And I've always associated, I have a couple different ones. I've always associated them, and chrysanthemum stones are the same way. They look like they have flowers in them. I've always associated those with the fairies, and there are fairy stones. But I think it's more when I've sensed it around me or I felt them around me, I've said, "Oh, you relate better to that." And weirdly enough, they really relate to obsidian because it comes out of the earth it's basically glass, that's what comes out of the volcanoes. And it's like them, it's born from this earth and it's kind of pure and straight.
Right.
Sure, don't pick it up, we'll cut you. But yeah, I do. And I think quartz covers everybody.
Right. I think, well, have you read the book, The Secret Life of Fairies by Maggie Hamilton?
Mm-hmm.
We did that in our book club, and she is, I love that book. It's such a beautiful book, but she does all these chapters and talks about the fairies with the rocks and the fairies with the trees and the fairies so like each thing kind of guards or
they really have assignments.
Right.
They really have assignments and they stick to them. And you can they walk or they travel on ley lines. That's sort of their superhighway system around. So if you go I was talking to this astrologer last year, and she had a woods she loved to walk in. And she looked it up because I started doing ley lines and found out it had a huge ley line that went through it. When she used to live there, she never knew that. But she always felt like someone was walking with her. Like there was energy there with her. And she said, "I've never felt that way." And she's up in New England where, there's lots of tall trees and things to walk around in. She said she never felt that way, but there. And then she found out it was a very clearly marked area that had a long history of ley lines.
Right.
So, yeah, ley lines are really magical things. They are powerful, and you can find them by dowsing. You can take dowsing rods and find them. You can find them by dowsing with a pendulum. I dowsed the tree when I figured out this is probably where it is. Well, because I was such a dummy, they did very carefully turn all the lawn to one side of the tree and to the other, bright yellow, in the middle of winter. So I couldn't miss. This is where the ley line is.
Wake up.
Wake up. And so you go out there and you walk around on it, you feel the change in energy. You can feel the change. It's like being, I guess, in places like Sedona that have vortices,
Hmm.
and even vortices, if you've studied them, they have different, they're maintained at different heights. They're maintained by different kinds of natural energy and what they'll fire up in you.
Hmm.
And I think every person can gain some from learning about these natural energies. I wouldn't, people say, well, why can't I go find them? The US is not as obsessive. In England, they have ley line groups. They have people that go out and map them. They have people measure them every week to see where they are. I read for a woman who, because she liked my ley line stuff, she belonged to a group and they followed ley lines up into the hills, and
Interesting.
so we're just
Yeah.
behind the curve.
Right, right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So have you sensed any of those little critters running around your house other than the cats?
And then the cats. I've always had a real connection to trees, and I've always felt a very strong connection to trees. And when I was reading the book that Secret Life of Fairies, and she talked about the specific fairies that guard the trees, and when she described them, it really is, she was almost describing exactly the energy that I pick up
Hmm.
with trees and why I'm so comfortable with them, or why I'm drawn to them. Um, and so that's the way that I think that I kind of pick up on it.
Hmm.
I do feel like, I mean, like I said, the last 2 months has been completely absorbed in these kitties and the mama kitty. And I do think that it was a way to gently nudge me to be more aligned with nature,
Hmm.
more aligned with animals, because I do like, like I said, I've always loved trees, and I always loved animals, but I don't feel like I get enough of that in my life. For some reason, I think it goes back to a past life actually, but for some reason, I don't like the forest. I find it almost claustrophobic, which is kind
Hmm.
of interesting. And there was a past life that was kind of, I had lived in a cabin in the forest, and it wasn't a particularly happy lifetime. I had
Hmm.
broken my foot, and I was like, because of the time period, I was just stuck
Hmm.
where, I was. And so it made sense to me why it would be very claustrophobic for me. But um, I'm more drawn to like the beach, the ocean,
Hmm. Open,
any kind of
open.
body of water. Yeah, anything,
Hmm.
and things that are very open. Um, but I do think that this was a kind of a push gently from my guides to be more in nature, even if it's just in the backyard, even if it's
Hmm.
just bringing animals into the home, that I need more of that. Again, that balance thing, right? I felt this
Hmm.
push to get everything in order, everything in balance, over the past, like probably since spring, early spring. Yeah.
Good. Well, we have 5 cats in my house, so I have no problem. I have more, and I have my old kitty, and she just hangs with me, and not she's
Oh,
not unfond of the other ones. They don't
right,
fight, but they just walk big circle around each other, just kind of like people do when they don't like other people. But
right,
I think sometimes in our world, when we do what we do, we align so much with humanity, and we work so hard with that energy
right.
that we don't let the other energies of the earth in for ourselves.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, um we're in the suburbs, right? So if I go on vacation or something and we'll go to the ocean, and I'll have those moments of real, where I feel so in touch with nature and so aligned with the earth and that kind
Mhm.
of thing. And then when you go back to your daily life, you're kind of, you get into that daily grind of, it's hardly a grind, right? Doing this work is hardly a grind, but
Well,
you
it's
get
not
into
a
that
grind.
a different flow.
Right. You got to understand, you wake up and you go, okay, got to check my emails and see,
Yeah.
how much is mixed up today. And like today, I had a woman signed up for a reading. I'd sent her invoice. Well, right before I read people, I always check to make sure the invoice is paid in case they missed it. I mean, it doesn't.
Right.
So I opened up, she hadn't paid it. So I sent her a reminder, and it was just reminded her of time. A lot of people have been forgetting this week, Kim. You are not alone.
Okay.
So, and she never showed up, but that was okay because then I got a chance to see your show with your husband, which if you haven't seen her show with Adam, go watch her. It's a great show. It's nice.
Thank you.
And
He was, yeah, I had to convince him to come on.
yeah, he's an Englishman. I was married to one of them. So,
Yes.
they get that way. But, it gave me a chance to sit and watch that sort of stuff and do a couple things. And also found time. I have a friend he was a master commander. He was a spy at the Pentagon. He's in,
Oh,
he
wow.
was in the naval, and he's out now and he's completely free. And he's writing books about spying from the metaphysical point of view.
Oh, really? Like remote viewing and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, he actually worked with some of the remote viewers there.
Oh, how interesting.
He said they say they're not there, but they're still there.
Yeah.
And he said he really wanted to get with the UFO people, but there was nothing in his portfolio that got him that close. But he's been inspired to write a thing about a serial killer. I mean, he was in the military, guys. He's writing about a serial killer in the Middle Ages somewhere, and he came across the original Italian sort of tarot deck, and he wanted me to explain to him about all the different tarot decks. So he and I spent an hour today with me pulling up everything from our fun and games, comic-y looking ones to our serious ones to why did I choose to read the deck I did. And I actually have a reprint of the deck he was interested in. So he now knows how to find that. And I think it's going to be interesting when he gets it done. I'll let you know when he finishes it. But he said, this
Yeah,
was
please do.
dragging me down into the pits. And
Right.
because I can remember being a reader in those periods of time that he's writing about.
Mm-hmm.
So I explained to him about wise old women that were the healers in their neighborhoods, and the church came in and said, no, 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 no. And then, and tarot readers were the same way. But they didn't like us.
Fascinating. Yeah.
That's okay. They didn't like me in the 50s either, guys. It was just about.
Yeah. Yes, there's always the naysayers. It's part of the plan for the
So
job.
what are your great plans for 8/8 Lionsgate? It's Tuesday.
Tuesday. Well, I think actually we'll be out of town. I'm trying to think where we will be because I think we might be on the coast, which would be because we're going up. So I think we're going up the Oregon. So I think we'll be on the Oregon coast.
Oh, beautiful.
On Tuesday. So I think that would be a perfect way to get kind of settling into that Lionsgate energy and getting in the flow of it a little bit. Yeah. So I think that would be perfect. That's the way it's going to be. Yeah.
Lionsgate has my last Lionsgate. I was having dinner with Debbie Freebert and Sheila, Vivian C, and Sherlyn and her sister, friends of mine in Colorado. I was visiting them, so Sheila and Debbie came over, and that was when they walked in the restaurant. I said they're serving a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, and they were like, "What?" I said, "Aren't you glad you're not on your channel tonight?" And then we sat, and I brought in a little rock ceremony. I let everybody pick blindly out of a sack of rock, and then I have a matrix in the middle, and I have every person place their stone, and then I tell them the stories that those stones tell me and then each person gets to take their stone home.
Oh, nice. I love that. And maybe Tuesday will be, we've still got Georgia coming, so maybe it will be Georgia. Maybe that will be the
Mm-hmm.
Lionsgate
Mm-hmm.
surprise.
Well, and those things take care of themselves. When I look at how
Yeah.
long these rocks have been here, I have a the oldest stone I have here is stromatolite. It's this, and it's a stromatolite, and those are little
Oh,
microorganisms.
that's beautiful.
They were the first microorganisms that grew in the world. There's been a whole
Beautiful.
other world locked up in ice age between this stone and where we are now. So I look at
Wow.
these and I figure they can hold the pattern and hold the piece. I can't.
Right. Yeah.
So
There
you
you go.
go up in Oregon, and
Proof positive.
Oregon is a wash in elementals. I want you to know.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe that's my journey. Maybe we're talking about this now, and maybe I
Mm-hmm.
will have some experiences on the road.
Oh, one more thing I want to say to you is I've had people send me pictures of fairies in their gardens, and they look like orbs, but when you really blow them up, there's like a little being in it.
Oh,
But they can look
interesting.
like
Oh my
orbs. I
gosh.
mean,
Right.
the ones that drift around my room look like orbs to me because I'm not going to wake up enough to look closely. But
Right.
so anyway, we have to go back. If you're ready to say bye, I hate to say goodbye to you, but
Yes, I know. I could talk all day to you,
I
Nancy.
know. It's unfortunately a problem I have. And that's okay. We're going to start blowing them out.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And by the way, your candle, the scent on it was apples and cinnamon.
Ooh, that sounds
I
great.
know. And with that, just say goodbye and take care, and we'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Nancy. It's always a pleasure to do this.
Blessings to
Thank
everyone.
you.